If you find something that you want to paint and you have no clue where to start, the tips in this video will help. I'll show you how a graphite study and a colour study helped me to paint this hummingbird in watercolour. One thing I do that has really helped me to grow as an artist is to experiment, and I know it will help you too. Experimentation is at the heart of creativity. It allows us to explore lots of different possibilities and discover our unique voice in art. If you can learn to fearlessly experiment, you will transform your visions into reality in ways you never thought possible. And I've discovered a new area that I'm eager to dive into, sketchbook journaling. Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. It's about capturing daily life with simple sketches, which is a straightforward but powerful way to document and grow as an artist. You combine the spontaneity of sketching with the reflective nature of journaling, and it's something that I believe can enrich any artist's journey. So I was thrilled to discover Samantha Dion Baker's class on Skillshare called Sketchbook Illustration for All, Draw Your Day with Watercolour and Pen. Samantha's approach to creating a daily creative habit that's as portable as your sketchbook is really inspiring. Her class has not only shown me how to whip up quick expressive sketches on the spot, but also how these sketches can become a vibrant visual diary of daily life. Skillshare, where I found Samantha's class, is the largest online learning community for creatives. It offers thousands of classes across a wide range of creative fields, from illustration to design and beyond. I have just published my 14th watercolour class on Skillshare myself, where I'll walk you through the techniques of wet on wet and wet on dry, while we paint these 3 seashells in watercolour. I've put a link to the class in the description of this video. If you're not sure where to start or how to continue building upon your skills, Skillshare has designed something really helpful called Learning Paths. These are a sequence of classes that guide you from being a novice to becoming a pro, reinforcing lessons and helping you build on your skills progressively. Whether you're interested in design, productivity, marketing, or any other creative field, there's a learning path that can help you achieve your goals. This is a fantastic opportunity for all of you looking to kickstart or continue your creative journey. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Join me and the vibrant community on Skillshare to explore new skills and get lost in creativity. Okay, back to the hummingbirds. The beautiful reference photo I used for this hummingbird painting was provided by Mark Holsapple, a talented photographer known for his stunning photos of birds and wildlife. Not only does Mark excel behind the lens, but he also shares a passion for watercolour painting, bringing his subjects to life in multiple mediums. All right, let's have a look at the graphite study and why it helped in my process. I used the pencil to experiment with the background, and I also wanted to work out how much detail I was going to include in my painting. In the past, I used to get lost in the detail and I tried to record everything I saw, and that resulted in paintings that were overwhelming to the eye. Now I prefer to suggest areas of my subject and paint details on the areas that interest me or on the areas where I want to draw the viewer's eye. A graphite study like this allows me to get to know the subject. I can erase areas that I think are overworked, and I can use the pencil to mimic the different painted edges that I want to include. I can decide where to put hard edges and where to put soft and lost edges. I don't always do graphite studies like this because I don't have the time, but when I do take the time to do them, I think it's time well spent because it gives me a plan for my painting. From the graphite study, I moved on to paint and paper, and I started my colour study. I painted a soft wash of colour on the background using the graphite study I did to guide the placement of the paint. When that was dry, I washed in some of the feathers wet on wet, and I allowed the paint to flow over the paper. I used burnt sienna, and up the top here I mixed some French ultramarine with burnt sienna. Then I wet the throat area with some water and I washed on some transparent orange. I wasn't sure how much detail to include here, so I used the Graphite Study as a guide. I mixed burnt sienna with French ultramarine to make a deep brown colour, and I washed that onto the feathers here as well. When that was dry, I added some detail to those feathers. And again, I used my Graphite Study here to help with the placement of those details. The reference photo shows a lot of detail there on those throat feathers, and I didn't want to paint all that detail in because I knew that it wasn't necessary. For those jagged feathers along the wing, I got a bit creative with a quill brush. I loaded it with paint and then just using my fingers, I teased the bristles apart, and this gave me the kind of jagged random marks that worked well here. I was winging it a bit here, so this was me experimenting on the fly. And with the flower, I'm not sure what it's called, I'm sorry. I'm sure somebody will tell me. It looks a bit like our Australian Banksias. Anyway, I had no idea how to paint it. I didn't want to fuss with it because my focus was the bird, but I needed something here. So I wet the paper with water and I experimented with some long flowing lines on the wet paper. I even experimented with some opaque white paint on the wet paper, but when I was finished, I wasn't that keen on it, so I knew I had to try a different approach on the next painting. I also felt my background wash was a bit too blue, so because this was an experimental painting, I toned the blue down a bit with some grey that I mixed. Then when I had finished and cut the painting from the board, I stood back and looked at it, and although I quite liked the background, I felt that it overwhelmed the little bird too much. So on my next painting, I decided to tone that down a bit. With this second painting, I decided to let some areas of the bird flow off into the background a little. So I wet the paper and then I let the paint flow while I was painting it. Here's the quill brush with the bristles separated. I've wet the body area and I thought I'd use this to paint off some little jagged edges on the front of the bird here. So I'm pulling that paint out onto the dry paper, but the body of the bird is wet there. So then I proceeded to paint in the feathers on the body the same way that I did that on the study. I was quite happy with the way it looked on the study, so I was able to do the same thing here. And with the throat feathers, I was able to do the same thing that I did on the study there as well. But here I experimented by letting some of the orange drift off the side. I mentioned that I didn't like the opaque white paint that I used on the study here on the flower, so I left it off this one. And I tried to keep it as simple as I could. And when I had finished this part, again, I stood back and looked at it. I actually put it beside the study and I felt that it needed some cool areas. While I didn't want it to be as dramatic as the study with the background, I just felt that it needed something. So I wet the background then with some water. I mixed the grey that I was using on the bird, which is a mixture of French ultramarine and burnt sienna, and I painted that onto the wet area. I took it down onto the bird as well. I added a little bit more down here as well on the wet paper. And over here too. And there they are all together. I hope this encourages you to experiment and explore different possibilities with your paintings. It's how you grow as an artist. Experimentation also keeps it more interesting because you're constantly trying new ways of doing things. I want to paint another version of this hummingbird because I think I can improve on the second painting. Or maybe I'll paint a different hummingbird altogether. If you'd like to paint a hummingbird with me, I will be making an online tutorial of this little bird. Head to my website where you can find all the information about my online classes. There's a link in the description of this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next video. I've got a tickle. These are these are class sequences that guide you through, reinforcing less. These are a sequence, different possibilities with your paintings. Paintings. I want to paint another version of this.
You didn't move the little man.
Oh, should I move him? It's too late now. Too late. Okay.